Well, thank you for the invitation to be here. And I'm going to give you a different model to look at. Instead of saying that I am bishop and I'm here to teach you about the curriculum, or I am PhD doctor, that I'm going to give you original theological insights, a new way of looking at things. I'm going to do this presentation more on the model of brother. Remember how 300 years ago they used to call the teachers in France masters? At times I ask my students to call me that just to inflate my ego. But for the most part, they got to the point of, it's more like a brother that I'm sharing with. So that's what I'm coming to tonight. That being the case, I don't have the answers, but what I will do is I'm going to allow you to read the Bishop Kelly diary that we've been keeping all of these years. And I'm going to let you know all the good things that we did and all the bad things. So I'm sure that you'll handle that with your kind of gentleness. What's the structure for tonight? We're going to go through the curriculum. We're going to explain why did the bishops do it this way and what was their time frame for doing it this way. Then we're going to shift. We're going to look at Bishop Kelly. What was it that Bishop Kelly decided to do and what not to do, and what was our time frame for doing it, right? In a nutshell, remember how they told you when you were in communication class, when you were in speech class, tell them what you're going to tell them, and at the end, tell them what you told them. Here's the 4 things I want you to remember tonight. Our people have concluded that the transition will be easier if you take the time, find the right teachers, give them the training, and pick the books that work for your level. Time, training, teachers, and books. So this is going to be a test. Everybody gets a test. We're all classroom teachers, right? So you're going to have a test. So if you're changing to the curriculum, why? Let's pretend this is a multiple choice test, all right? How many of you, raise your hands, how many of you say we're doing this because the bishops have told us to? How many are doing this because the president and the principal says, you're going to do this? How many people say the head of the department, where all the seat of power resides, the department chair, said, you're going to do this? Right. Anybody doing this because the teachers got together, saw the wisdom behind it, and said, we're going to do it because of we teachers? Okay. Is there anybody doing anything for other reasons than that? Okay, well, if you are, what's the timeline for your change? Some of you have already started this. Some of you are going to start. Some of you are still wondering, should we start? And if we do, how do we do this? So let's begin. I'd like to start by saying if time is one of the factors that helped Bishop Kelly in the transition, let's look at the bishop's timeline. So if you can, go back to that time in history that is even before the Second World War. Go all the way back to the time in the First World War. It's a European-centered Roman Catholic Church. The First World War decimated those parts of the continent where many of the Catholics were. France, Germany, Spain, Italy, England. Entire generations of young men were either wiped out or threatened to be wiped out. Towns were destroyed. 20 years later, what happens? Another world war kicks in. And this one ends not just with tens of millions of people dead. This one kicks in and ends with an atomic weapon. One bomb can destroy an entire city. Well, 17 years after the end of the Second World War, the Vatican Council. Pope John the 23rd calls this council. He calls many of these bishops who have lived through these experiences, and as he says, he opens up the shutters, he opens the windows, and allows the Spirit, the breath of the Spirit, to move in. 17 years later, we've got the Vatican Council. What comes out of the Vatican Council? This wonderful treasure trove of theology. There's constitutions, there's documents, there's letters. This is wonderful, but very high-level theology. When the bishops leave and they take all these documents with them, one of their questions is, how do we bring it down to the level of most of the Catholics in the churches, and for our sake, the Catholics in the classrooms, sitting in the chairs? Well, 30 years later, they've got the catechism. The catechism is then the gift that the bishops were asking for that says, here's how we can answer specific questions. Right? 15 years after that, we now have, sitting in classrooms in Bishop Kelly High School, books that were based on the catechism framework. Right? If that's the case, once they get this framework that was by committee unearthed, came to, revealed, what did they do with it? They started to look at the content of what was being taught in classrooms and the method, the books that were being used. What was their conclusion? Deficiencies, inadequacies, things that were not articulated with either clearly enough or strongly enough. And that's where we're starting. Here is a list of the 10 that they found most common. Now, what you're going to be passed out on is a list, and that list is these are the doctrines. Now, here's what I want you to do with this sheet of paper. I want you to take the sheet of paper that says, here's the doctrines. Ask yourself, where are these doctrines taught in your school? Identify them. Is that a freshman, a sophomore, junior? And then the second thing I need you to do is, so what grade would you give yourself? Because if you and I found deficiencies, as ministers of education, we would want to change them. That's what the bishops did. Now, if you're already using books, don't use this to grade the books you've got now. Use these to grade the books you had before you shifted. Okay? Let me give you a few minutes to then work on that. When the dinner bell rings, I lose you. So, whether you're done or not, in a minute or so, we're moving on. So they start with the concepts of, I've got the catechism here, I have a committee, the committee starts going through what's being taught around the country. One of their conclusions is the doctrines. I don't think there's anything in there that says that's a heresy. That's wrong. They were talking about, that's just not enough. We got to bolster it. We got to bolster it up, all right? What do you think they did next? Take the books and see what they found in the books. What did they find in the books? This. Turn it over. Now, if you're doing it now, don't grade this now, because according to what the bishops have come up with, all of these should have been corrected. This would be for those people who we haven't done it yet, or before we switched over, we were using books. So yours, Maureen, was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, Maureen is going to look at her books and say, 3 years ago, this is the way we would grade the books, because you've been doing this new framework for 2 years. Have you been in the new? Yeah. All right, so do this based on before you changed. How would you grade your textbooks? They look at the content. They see some deficiencies. They look at how is that being taught, the books. They see some deficiencies, okay? Based on that, they said, well, we've got a choice to make. We need to come up with a curriculum that the content is authentic and it is complete, does it all, doesn't leave out certain things like the role of the magisterium, all right? And we got to find out, are we going to start our own publishing house to get this thing right? So in the process, they have to answer that question. If we want to get it right, are we going to be the ones who are going to do it? So again, part of what we have learned at Kelly is it's going to take time, so just a little bit of review. So 92, catechism comes out, all right? A couple years later, they find some inadequacies. And then a couple of years later, they have a protocol to then try to decide what about the materials that are being out there. 97, they come out with, there are 10 areas that we find deficient. And back in committee, what do we do with this? The decision is made, we will not publish. We will work with the present publishers. Well, the present publishers want to make sure that if they do a whole new series of books, it's going to be with the blessings of the bishops. They've got a practical reason that says, if the bishops don't bless our whole series that we've been involved in, there's going to be an awful lot of people who will not buy it. So what I'm going to ask is, Bishop, could you please tell us what's got to be in there? And if we give it to you, will it then accept your blessings? All right? So they started with the little kids, and they're eventually going to move up to where we are. About 6 years ago, they got to where we are. Year after that, here comes the framework. A couple years later, here's what the publishers have had, the framework. They have submitted, and at times back and forth until we can now come up with a list. More books are going to still be added, but we're going to come up with a list of books that are meeting the approval. So we now have what's in place. There's a protocol for it, right? How do you go about implementing this? Remember we said Kelly's diary reads, you got to take time. You got to have the teachers, you got to train the teachers, and you got to have the resources. So this is only the way we did it. How do you implement that? Well, one of the things we did is we've got this article by this, and I thought it would fit well. Boston, right? Is that better than quoting somebody from Los Angeles or from Chicago or wherever your intersectional feuds are? And so Patrick Manning comes up with this, and he says, here's a suggestion that I have as a theologian on how do you go about helping your teachers? If the training of the teachers is one of the factors, 5 marks, he's called them. We now have a little bit of a structure that says if we're going to train our teachers to do it, help us be more specific on it. Obviously, one of them is going to be Scripture. If the bishops say when you start your series, you're going to start with, in essence, 3 Christology courses. If the Bible is the foundation of what it is to be a Catholic, therefore it's got to be the foundation of what it is to be a Catholic school, then you better have a strong Bible section. So for us, could you look at your department and say, we've got a real strong Scripture program. The kids who go through it have both knowledge of and the methods to continuing to learn. One of the choices you're going to be given is, as a senior, you can have, because we're going to be told 6 courses you must have, one, and then we'll give you a series of 5 different electives. One of them could be, as a senior, the kid takes another class on Scripture. There's going to be 3 at the beginning then on Christology, and then there could be a 4th one. So you can see the emphasis that they're placing on an understanding of Bible. Next, it is preaching to the choir when you come to a Lasallian gathering like this and say to people, the teacher is going to be key. It's going to be dependent on who do you put in with those kids. If you've got the right person with the kid is more likely to buy it. I'll accept the message if I can connect with the messenger. Now that could be, he's my coach, all right? That could be the reason why. So we've got coaches in our departments, and at times we find the kid's credibility with somebody who is, you come to my games, you coach, you're involved in my world, all right? And this is one of the reasons it took us time, will you give them enough time to get trained and retrained? Will you give them the resources it costs? So if it's going to cost you, let's say, $500 to send them to a place, will your school be able to say, we can set aside the $500? What we're doing now, could you leave school for a couple days and we'll find a substitute for you? So for us, if the teacher's the key, it's not just finding the teacher you already got, but how can you help them learn these new courses? Are they going to be student-centered courses? Remember I told you you can read our diary? Here's part of our diary. I'm looking at the new teachers. We got 2 new teachers this year. I'm looking at the new teachers' first semester course on the Paschal Mystery. And I'm looking through the vocab, and one of the vocabs is proto-evangelium. My thought is, I'm a 15-year-old boy who is looking at the cute girl over there, and some teacher says, you need to know proto-evangelium. All right? Is it a student-centered one? We made a decision at our school that some of the stuff that would love to be covered in all this, we're not going to be able to. Why? Because there's some of the stuff that we think the kid is then going to connect with the message because the school provides the kind of, oh, you understand me. You're in my corner. You're with me. It is back to the Emmaus story, all right? Walk with the kid, find out what the kid's saying, and then answer their stories, right? Answer their questions. Now, this is going to be key for us. The bishops made that decision. We're not going to start a whole new publishing house, right? And I'll show you a list of things that the bishops said, whoever's going to publish and whoever's going to teach, there's lots of different methods for doing it. We're not going to tell you how, but we will tell you what, and we'll also tell you when. We want this done at the first quarter, and then this one, and then this one, then this one. But the what and the when is up to the bishops. The how is up to the publishers and the teachers. We didn't sacrifice retreats. We didn't sacrifice the academic. We didn't sacrifice the service hours. We didn't sacrifice, you can't go on that field trip with that other teacher, or you can't be in the team who's leaving early because we need you in the class in order to. So it really is supposed to be a holistic, but that's Lasallian, right, to touch their hearts? So yeah, is it academic? Will the kid, even if they're not asking the question, what is proto-evangelium? Even if they're not asking that question, we will test them on some of the language of what it is to be Catholic. How are you going to keep your program holistic? This is, I think, 37 years for me, all right? If you give me a group of kids for 37 years, do you think I could talk for an hour and a half in the classroom over all this stuff? I could. That model of the sage on the stage, right? All right, we could use that model. What is suggested and what we seem a lot of common sense with is this idea of, no, it's not the sage on the stage, it is much more the brother who is going to be walking with you on this. Back to the teacher. Remember, it's going to be time and teacher. It's going to be training and the books that we choose. So part of what it is on teacher is this humility. We need time, therefore, for things like a day of recollection. We need time for prayer. We need time to get together to keep ourselves grounded. All right, now, let me back up for a minute and we'll talk. This is a theologian's suggestion as to, if you're training your teachers, look for this, emphasize this, encourage this. Your thoughts on it? You want to add some? Want to take some off? How are you doing it at your school?
Like the idea you had about begin with your questions, then lead them to Christ.
I can remember in high school, this one here, there were some teachers we could get off track. We can get them talking about the Bears. So, do kids know how to get us starting to talk about OU versus Notre Dame? By the way, my kids already know. If you want an A in the rest of the class, and you don't even have to come to class, 2 tickets to ND versus OU. That's all it takes. And then you go to Panera for 9 weeks, right? The kid is then going to the cool teacher, kind of, right? So it's not to be the cool teacher, but to understand we are talking about your life. So our girls just won the state volleyball championship on Friday, right? Go back. If I was in class today, you can bet it. Those girls who are on the volleyball team, they're going to be recognized in class, right? Is that going to cut out some time? We found it's going to cut out some time if you centered in on the kid's life. Yeah. And we made that decision, well, then we just can't get to all the concepts. This is about teacher, right? Training, teacher. Okay. All right. So what's their goal? Remember the time frame. You start with Vatican II, and 30 years later, you got the Catechism. Now the Catechism is there. How do we bring it down to the level of the kids? All the 15 years later, you now have got this here, right? So what's the bishop's goal? Their goal was we're only speaking for us, not for little kids. They wanted to have something for the high school age kids, that something could be used for the homeschool kids. It could be for the parish. Could be for a school, could be for the parish ministry. They wanted some kind of a structure that could be given to somebody and say, from this structure, you create all kinds of materials. They wanted it to go over 4 years. They had a model different than the model that we're using at Bishop Kelly. All right, we're using a block system of 9 weeks equals 1 semester, which is making it even harder for us to cover all the content. So they had a system of 8 semesters. What they decided is 6 of them, and in this order, are what we're going to require. And then they're going to give you 2 choices, which they said junior, senior year, and we'll show you what those 5 are. Right? Now, if that's the case, how did they decide what not to do? Committee. Most of the bishops were not in on the nitty-gritty of how do you teach high school kids, right? They give it to the committee comes back, the committee gives them all the reasons why, and the bishops, you might say, vote the wisdom of the rest of the bishops that says, all right, so you're not going to get involved with any of this? Nope, we're not going to get involved in any of this. We're going to leave that up to 2 main groups. 1 are the publishers of the books, and 2 are the teachers in the classroom. Okay? We will not tell you in our framework, these are the learner-based. These are the examples you need to use. This is the cultural adaptations. This you got to understand a freshman is different than a senior and all that. They decided not to do that. So what that's going to do for us is we're going to be able to take any examples that a publisher has done and say, now I can do some of my own. I'm going to get the what and the when from bishops. I'm going to get the how from the publishers and my own teaching experience. 2 criteria are going to be used then. One is it authentic? They're going to start with the negative. Whatever's in the book, whatever you're going to teach in your class, cannot contradict what's in the catechism. All right? So if a parent says, is it true that you told my daughter the following? We have to assume whatever I told the daughter could not be contradictory to what's in the catechism, right? So it cannot be, I know the catechism says, but come on, guys. And then I give me. That's back to that, I am the departer of wisdom. You don't want to go there, right? Because it's not my classroom, right? It's the Catholic Church's classroom, which I've been hired to work in. Second thing, they want to make sure that whether it's the high school kid from Portland, Maine, or the high school kid from Key West, Florida, what they're shooting for, this is the goal, is we have a common language that we talk about. So you're going to have an awful lot of terms that we're finding kids are not talking in that language. We are finding that the adults in the Catholic Church have concluded that the children in the Catholic Church need to know what these terms are. And at times we're having difficulty making the kids say, I want to know that. By knowing that, this really is good news. Proto-evangelium. Do I have to know how to spell it? Okay. All right. So, but that's part of it. We wanted a common language. What does it mean to be Catholic? As I was listening to Dr. Right, I'm picking up, boy, there's an awful lot of what he's saying at his level that I'm not finding at my level. All right. The level of my kids really is, many of them are be nice person equals Catholic. All right. Well, therefore, I'm not going to judge you, and you won't judge me. So what identifies us as Catholic? Well, they want to make sure in doctrine and in practice, in liturgies, in service, all of it would be understood as, now that is particularly in the Catholic tradition. And the last mark is the wider context. Do you have anything from the Church Fathers in there? Do you have anything from Augustine in there? Anything from the Fathers of the Church in there? Anything from a council in there? Instead of saying there's one person who I am using to reference this, no, the Catholic teaching, they would say, needs to be expanded beyond that. So, first criteria of what's ever in the core syllabus or whatever is going to be in the book is it authentic Catholic? Okay? Is it complete? There's 5 marks on this. Does our curriculum reflect the catechism? They say it's going to take you 8 semesters to get through the catechism. all right? And it's going to take you 4 years to do that. So if the catechism talks about the faith, the sacraments, morality, and the prayer life, right, then that's going to be the basic outline of what we want our kids to be able to go through. And by the way, one of the things they have found in some books is not that necessarily some things were said incorrectly or flat out wrong. What they said is some books, some classes seem to just not say everything. What you may have said is okay, but it just wasn't complete. Back to the Scripture. 6 required classes, 3 of them are based in Scripture. Okay? You can see where the emphasis is going to be on that. If it is complete, it's going to have lots of different sources that you're going to draw on. One of the problems we're finding is kids don't care that much about that. Kids are not swayed by the 3rd century father or the 12th century doctor of the church, or that for them is not a reason to embrace. So what we're finding out, you might say, is I got to know it. But remember, the bishop said, how do we get it across to them? I may choose not to say, and because St. Augustine said, but I'm still going to get across an Augustine kind of a understanding, okay? Doesn't surprise you. Jesus, Christology, 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 okay? That is what they would say would be a complete kind of a curriculum. So, include them all. All right. So, they take this complete and correct, and they look at all of the things they want to teach from the catechism. Then they hand to the publishers in almost really minute details, make sure the following concept is clearly articulated somewhere in these classes that we have for you. All right, I just picked one. And I started with the first 3 and skipped down to the last 115 criteria that says, all right, publisher, you want it correct and you want it complete? This is just from the first of the 4 pillars in the catechism, and I'll give you 115 different criteria. And when you give me a book, I'm going to say, all right, is number 89 in there? Where is number 92? Where is 101 in there? Okay? So what the publishers have done for us, instead of us coming up with a class that says, on my own I will do it, the publishers have. Then we look to see, have the bishops checked off all 115 times 4? Whew. All right? Back to the bishop's document. This is part of the how. They want to make sure that we understand there is diversity as to how, in the trenches, we pass on this wisdom. So if you could go to that part of the handout, 1997, General Directory for Catechesis. Are these methods being used throughout your curriculum?
Answer this like as of now.
Yeah. However is most helpful. Either now that we're starting it, are we using different methods? I ask you to personalize it. What are your top 3 teaching methods? Human experience, the role of the teacher, memorization. Which are the ones that you use, you found most effective? We have not found that now that we are 1 year and 1 quarter in to the bishop's framework, that we can no longer use some of these. So we have not found a conflict. We have changed content, and we've changed publishers, and we got new books, and at times we got new teachers. But in terms of a teacher saying, can I still do some of these? Yes, we still do some of these, all right? Those of you who have already started to transition, Do you see any conflict between what we've been told, you can use these methods, and what your teachers are asking? Is anybody coming up with, can we do this anymore? Do we have to switch teaching methods? We have not found that now that we are 1 year and 1 quarter in to the bishop's framework, that we can no longer use some of these. So we have not found a conflict. We have changed content, and we've changed publishers, and we got new books, and at times we got new teachers. But in terms of a teacher saying, can I still do some of these? Yes, we still do some of these, all right? Those of you who have already started to transition, do you see any conflict between what we've been told, you can use these methods, and what your teachers are asking? Is anybody coming up with, can we do this anymore? Do we have to switch teaching methods?
I haven't had anyone say that they have to switch. I've had people complain that memorization seems to be increasing, the need for it because of the detailed information.
Anybody else find that?
It seems to be a real struggle for the students. Just because where we are at in society or our technology. We went home and memorized the stuff, and you came back in and you spit it out the next day, but is that really taking it in and having it become a part of it?
Those of us who have taught for a while recognize that's the first step in learning. So just commit to memory what those 10 commandments are. Now we've got those commandments, we can have a conversation. Does that violate the 3rd commandment? Does that go against the spirit of the 5th commandment? We could do that, but if we don't have enough time, what some of our teachers are wondering is, are we just making goose liver? Cram it in, cram it in, cram it in, cram it in. All right, spit back out the test, go to the next concept. Cram it in, cram it in. Now, freshman year, this is our 2nd time around. Sophomore year, 1st time around. We've already told ourselves a year ago, freshmen, you're going to go through this in the first 9 weeks and the second 9 weeks. All right. Then the second course after Christmas, we're going to do it twice in a cycle. But now that we've done it twice, and this is our 3rd time around, we need to know how much of this is going to be memorized, what kind of tests, what's appropriate for. All right, so we gave our teachers some slack that says it's going to take you into your 3rd cycle of teaching the course before we can start to decide, I'm sorry, you're going to have to cover that concept. Okay. Anybody who's been through it before, are you finding some of these? In order to teach the framework, you're going to have to drop some, add others. So I'll bring our experience, and then we'll talk about it, right? Anybody who has been doing it, any of the methods you're finding you can't use anymore? Mm-hmm.
We're trying it, it's our 1st year. But we've talked to some other diocesan schools, what are they doing? And we got the feedback back that no one can complete 2 of these courses in 1 year. They can't use 2 textbooks and actually do them justice. Mm-hmm. So choose one. Does that fit into yours?
Yes and no. Here's what the curriculum's supposed to look like. Left-hand column, that's what you need to do, and that's the order you should do them. Right-hand column, those are the choices you have. Of those, pick 2. Okay? First adaptation we made is we went to our president and said, could we take this here and move it over to the senior course? So we're going to do what you might call personal morality and social justice in the junior year, fitting those 2 back to back. It is out of order. At the local church level, permission was given to make that adaptation. Okay? And then the marriage course is going to go into what we now call the adult Christian living course, which is going to be an adaptation of number 4 here. Okay? So let me show you what happened at Kelly and how we dealt with that. So this is on our homepage. I'm sorry, not Bishop Kelly. This is on the Brothers homepage, right? So when you look at this, you would say that's what they have told us you need to keep in mind when you're transitioning. Examine the current curriculum, needs of the students, overlap redundancies, eliminate duplicates. Okay? You got to have the vision and the charism clear as you're starting to make choices, which one they're going to keep with that Lasallian charism and mission that we have. If you're going to use a different set of content, you're going to have to make sure that the teaching methods can be creative, because if it is to get through all of this content, you rely on the lecture format. I got the information, I need to get it to you, ready, set, go. No, you can't go to the bathroom. Back you go. Don't do that, all right? Continue to use creative teaching methods. And this one here, looking ahead. All right, so this is what we Lasallians have said. This is going to be on one of our pages that says this is the guidance that we have. How did Kelly, school in Tulsa, Oklahoma, apply that then? Right? Are you changing because, like the bishops, you have found some deficiencies in your program, or are you changing because somebody else has told you you need to change? If we had to first buy into this, because when we first we went to the web page and I printed off a copy of all of what needs to be in it, and I handed out to the teachers. Their first thought was they shut down, they built up a wall, said can't be, never possible, and all, until the people who are doing it buy into it. You're going to have a slew of problems. That's one of the reasons why it took us time. If I was to say, all right, here it is, and when we first started doing it, there weren't even books out. Don't even wait for the books. Design the course based on these 114 things. Get it all done in 9 weeks and tell the freshmen there's no potty breaks. It wouldn't have worked, all right? The books, admit it. Some of us have been using books and teaching courses forever. That's my favorite book. That's my favorite section. I'm going to take that book with me to the grave, and I'm not going to teach this course any other way than that. What's the timeline that you've already had? You're already into your 3rd year now of the timeline. What resources are you going to need? Boy, picking the personnel, okay? Like I said, we've got a new teacher who is trying to teach Proto-Evangelium to sophomores. And that's pushing a stone up a hill, okay? To answer your question, we just looked at it and said, we can't. It's not an option. Even if we said, we're going to cut out everything else that our school has done and hopes to do for kids in the theology department, we still couldn't, as teachers, say, not only do they know it, they understand it. It applies to their life, and we've moved them from information to formation to transformation in 9 weeks. We've done it. We said we couldn't do it. We got to that point. All I'm saying is, I don't know about you, we got to the point we're not going to be able to cover it all. So, we then had to make a decision. What are you going to leave in? What are you going to leave out? Outside of the department, there were people who were saying, well, of course you're going to teach church history course. I mean, the kids need to know. You're going to have people saying you can't leave that out, and there's going to be implications we found out for whatever it is. Our kids take the Ager tests. If we said we're not going to teach them church history, every time the results come back on church history questions, it's going to look bad on the school, right? Boy, your kids don't know church history. So there's going to be implications on whichever courses that you pick. All right, back to your question. I'll show you in a minute. We found up to 25% of our 9-week course is going to be spent on what we would call local needs, leaving 75%. Even if we had 100%, we still didn't think we could cover all the concepts. Local needs like what? You take freshmen. I'll just show you the freshman course in a minute. You take the freshmen, and you say, we want them to understand what it's like to be a comet. Well, whose department's going to do that? We're going to do that in our department, right? And then we want to find out, who's this Bishop Kelly that we're named for, right? And then what's this whole Lasallian thing that everybody keeps talking about there? So when we do it, here's what it turned out to be for us. We got about 42 teaching days. We decided we want our kids to have information on sexuality. Roughly an hour and a half a day. 4 classes a day, about an hour and a half a day. Okay? So we got about 42 teaching days. And we decided we're going to take, for freshmen and sophomores and juniors and seniors, we want continuing education in sexuality. When we looked at the framework, there was no course that said this is going to answer their questions. Right? We decided as a community, that's a kid question. Even if they're not asking it the way the adults is, sexuality is a big thing. We decided to insert 5 days in our freshman course for sexuality. We made a decision, we want drug and alcohol education. So 2.5 days are going to be taken out for drug education. Why in our department? Because once leading up to this person coming in and after they leave, we can talk about the moral implications of this. The science department doesn't really want to get involved in that. Freshman class, we took that out. So, and everybody can fill in your list, right? We got a pep rally today. And you have 20 minutes or half a class on, and it's a Friday. And normally they're in uniforms, but now it's free dress. And it's homecoming weekend. And you're really going to talk about proto-evangelium and the last class of the day, so we all know that kind of. So what ends up happening is we didn't have a semester, a quarter. We got about 5.5 weeks to do this. Now, we look at this, we go back up the food chain through the principal to the president, and the president says, you can do it. You can make those cuts. You're going to tell me what the cuts are. You're going to tell me what you are going to teach. I'm going to look at them. So it's not carte blanche. I'm going to look at them, and then I'm going to send it back down the food chain saying, yes, you can do that. Base your course on those number of days. To answer your question, make a decision early. Are you going to try to do it all? If you do, all I can say is we don't know what to tell you how to do it, though. Yeah. For us, it was years in advance. One of the reasons is, did you say you are principal? Just head of the department. Right. One of the things is that we're going to order 2 books a year. One for the 9 weeks before Christmas and one for the 9 weeks after. Let's say we got 200 kids, each book is about $15, all right? We need to be able to go to the people who do budgets and say, we need $3,000. And we need it again the next year, and the next year, and the next year. We found you don't go to administrator and say, let's do the whole thing once. We need $12,000 in the budget for next year's theology books. It may not be that we can't get it done in, let's say, 1 year, but all of the other stakeholders, they say, no, don't try to do this all at once. We picked St. Mary's. We stayed with the brothers one. And we did it because we felt it fit our kids' vocabulary, reading levels, and also because they had some things online that would say to our teacher, now here's the sample test for the 2nd chapter. You can take this, modify it, print it off on your own. It gave us some resources. Right? You want the PowerPoints? Go to this click over there. So a lot of publishers with a lot of different advantages and disadvantages. We got one from everyone. I think we found everybody, and we found some so scholastic, so, in the best sense, Catholic, but way beyond. Now, we have placement tests. We don't have, all right? We're just going to place you in. So we got a wide range of academic skills coming in, all right? So for that, we found some of these books just can't help us, okay? So looking 2 years down the road, we looked for money, we looked at teachers, and one of the reasons we looked at for teacher training is, so we've got several teachers who are coaches. Some of our coaches, in the summertime, what they do is, I'm going to have a camp. And I'm going to set up my camp from these weeks, and I depend on that for our income. So if we're going to say, all right, coach, you're going to have to go away for some training, a week here, a weekend there in the summertime, that teacher can't be put into a position where either pick the camp or training as a theology teacher. So one of the reasons we started early enough is because some of the training was going to be done in the summertime, and we want to give those teachers an understanding of, at this time, in that year, in the summer, this is what we're going to ask of you. So we got all the books ahead of time. And part of it is you bring new books in, and you say, could you look at these books? Now, he's also full-time this, that, and the other thing, and he's got a life, right? You can't just give a whole set of all of these books to the freshman teacher and say, evaluate all of them and have them on my desk by Monday. So it's going to take time, and it kind of shows respect, we found, to that person that recognizes you've got all these other duties, and this is one more. Now, if we just pull them out of the classroom and say, go someplace like this, and the two of you sit at that table and hash out the freshman curriculum, yeah, it could be done in a lot sooner time. But for us, we decided it's going to take the kind of time. If they're doing all these other things, it's going to take about that much time. So what would it look like? It looks like this. Let's pretend that Bishop Kelly is starting now. Right? Right now, we're going to start the process for something that you already know we're in our second year. But we're going to begin the process now. Next month, we've already been told budgets. We need to find out about your budgets. So we then submit to our principals, we're going to need $3,000 for books, and we're going to need it the next year and the next year and the next year. All right? By December, we're already starting to find out, well, how much will it cost to send teachers? We got the book budget done. Now we're looking at how much is it going to cost to have teachers go places and do things. And by January, all the publishers have been notified, and they're sending us their books. We get the books in a month. And not only do you get it, but we made a choice. Whoever we're buying the freshmen for, we're going to try to stay with that publisher throughout. So one of the problems is if the freshman teacher is the tail that's wagging the dog, the sophomore teacher may say, but I hate that book. So now you've got to have the time to not only let you see this one for next year, but we got to get the one for the year after so that you can get people in. Now, if you choose not to use the same publishers, you won't need that kind, right? You could pick whatever the sophomore teacher wants, whatever the junior teacher wants, but that wasn't ours. Part of it is we wanted to pick the teachers a year before, okay? One of the things we found out is that there's certain things that teachers got to have. You got to have what we would call a bachelor's in theology and 2 years experience. Because some of this stuff, you're going to have to be able to boil it down. It's inevitable. We hired 2 new teachers literally straight out of college now, but what we're trying to do is to find somebody who's got a context in Bible before you teach the freshman course on Bible. Get all the workshops set up. Lessons started to get planned. Everybody's comfort levels down, no stress. That was our 2-year process. Okay? Could it be done sooner? Sure could. But we found for us, it worked well that we had that time.
With our current faculty and when we look at the curriculum, how much do they know based upon that curriculum? I still remember you telling me probably about half. We're going to have that training. So I think even assessment, an honest assessment of your faculty and what their skills are and what their skills aren't. And then where are you going to fill in, and if you have hires, what does it have to be, is also an important process. I think inherent in all of this, but very early on, you've got to sort of assess, as you did for me, where are we with what we can do at this point in time, and start planning from that as well, because you are going to probably have some hires as you go along.
We have nobody on staff who has taught high school kids ecclesiology. Nobody can say, I've done that. So I can teach high school kids. We have nobody with that kind of a background. So when we're teaching a high school course on ecclesiology after Christmas now, whoever's doing it, it's going to be first time at the dance for them as well. So that's what we're saying, minimum. It's tough to throw a new person in with the depth, the density of this content and ask that teacher, can you bring it down to the level of the freshman, the sophomore, the junior? Okay? Face it, there will be some people on your staff, I don't want to do this. And if you make me do it, I'm just going to make it look like the course I'm doing now, and I'm going to put a new name on it, okay? So I'll just pick on me. I've been doing that morality course for 27 years now, and call it whatever you want. I'm still teaching it my way, because my way is correct, and it is complete, right? You're going to have teachers who resist changes to their favorite kind of course and favorite kind of lesson plan. So, remember, they decide what and when, we decide how. I don't know, and Maureen, you were telling me in your diocese, for us, we got the teachers together who were teaching the freshman course. We said, here's everything you're supposed to teach them. Myself, and then working with those freshman teachers, we then decided what's going to be left on the cutting room floor and what's going to go into the curriculum, right? Because the teachers who did it had input onto what and how, we didn't have as much resistance. Now, we haven't gone through the whole 4 years yet, all right? But if you let the teachers into what's the book, what's going in, what's staying out, how you want to teach this, we found that was very helpful. Recognize it. It is about Jesus. The new curriculum is very Christocentric. All right? For us, we're going to have 10 sections of any one of these classes, 5 in the first quarter and 5 in the second quarter. All right? So, did you want a core set of examination questions? We found the first time we did it, we told those teachers, all right, now, you can teach and examine them in the first time out the way that you think is best. The second time around, we're going to start trying to find out whatever you're teaching them and whatever he's teaching them, we're going to try to get you two together so that will be a core set of questions that we can say no matter who taught your kid, these are the concepts. Third time is there is a core set of examination questions. You still have a lot of freedom as to how, and you have a lot of freedom as to the pace, but everybody agrees starting the course on the third time around, by the time we get there, these concepts need to be mastered. If we threw out, there's no more sexuality. There's nothing about drug education. There's nothing about Lassallean. We don't have time for pep rallies. It was our conclusion. This is just what the teachers at Kelly said to pass on to you. They think the kids would really suffer from it. We know our kids, and our kids need certain things, so in other words, don't try to do it all, right? It has been difficult. It's been difficult for different groups of kids. All kids are struggling with proto-evangelium. A lot of kids are struggling with the particular Catholic language. We've got about 30 different schools that send our kids to Bishop Kelly, right? Most of those kids come from a Catholic school. But this program hasn't been instituted at the grade school so that the kids are already coming with the language, right? They're starting to hear it when they're ninth graders. It's tough. I get emails from some parents who say, what is the teacher doing and how come the teacher can't? And it has not been easy.
How's it going over with the non-Catholics?
You know, we find an awful lot of our non-Catholic kids are at times more Christian than some of our Catholic kids. And many of those non-Catholic kids are coming there because I want this level of education. So, education-wise, they're keeping up. Content-wise, they're giving us the right answers. But it isn't a formational experience for them. It's, I understand my role in this Catholic school, and right now,
What is this standardized test you're referring to?
Acre? Okay. Anybody else use Acre? Do you? It's a standardized test that the NCEA puts out that says no matter where you are in the country, we can give you a test that says the following pieces of knowledge about the faith can be put on a standardized test and then compared to what you think the kid should know. And then we're going to give you questions about belief and behavior. How often do you go to church? What do you believe about?
This is a test for teachers.
No, for kids. Yeah.
That was NCEA. And they're actually in the process of aligning the rest of
So eventually, the whole thing will. But remember, we've already concluded the kids are going to bomb the history part of it. That's a decision we've made, and we can explain it to people as to why. So what does it come down to? All right? Here's our lists of do this and don't do that. Anybody, isn't there either a blog or a TV show, eat here or eat this, don't eat that? All right? Here's ours, all right? Find somebody who has taught the concepts. Like I said, for ecclesiology, we got nobody who's taught ecclesiology to high school kids, so we're all going to jump in the pool together on that one. I know some teachers say, I want to teach freshmen. No, I only like to teach seniors. But part of what we found out is that content is going to be important. So if I got the content from my junior year, but the framework says, well, now we're teaching that to the freshmen. Our experience was, get them to teach the freshmen then. They can learn how to deal with freshmen, but the content that they need is more important than their comfort level. We let them pick. But now that they picked, they're not out. They can't back out. This book is not working for us. I got a request from the sophomore teachers for the Paschal Mystery course. We found another book that we think would be very helpful. So what we need is, and I had to say, no, I'm sorry, the budgets have been set. So once the teachers buy into it and they get to pick, then that's the book that they have to now stay with. And not only the book, but also the content. Since we decided we're not going to cover it all, what we teach is there. Our local needs say that we're going to do a modified course on social justice, and we're going to teach a summer school course on the interreligious dialogue, and we're going to teach another course that fits into what we used to call the adult Christian living course, which would be now, how do you live as a disciple of Jesus in the world? So we made that choice, and the example was we excluded church history. Bunch of kids, they don't have it, all right? So you just go into the course knowing they don't have this. Theology of the body, drug education, Bishop Kelly, time off for things like pep rallies. We did not start out with, first time out, all teachers will always be on the same track, and when you're done, you will all have the same standardized tests. By week 3, you have to be here. By week 6, you have to be where. We told ourselves we're going to get there, but we didn't start saying we will get there. All right? If you're doing it in the junior year, don't do it again in the senior year, even if it ruffles some teachers' feathers. So, don't do what? I know, but I've always taught that section. I love that section on the saints. Okay, well, we can't do everything. Parents, pastors, kids, all the religion teachers, we decided, no, don't try to get everybody together to make a decision as to what stays and what doesn't. We decided, don't start all 4 classes at once. For lots of reasons, don't start all of them. It's not just the religion. The finance people need to be in on this too. We have an adult Christian living course that was started about 30 years ago. When we look at it, some of the stuff is like the American family, the Catholic family. Holy cow, when we look at what we were teaching 30 years ago about family and families now and families in the future, some of this stuff really has to be updated. Here's what the boss said. He's in between us and the bishop. A priest, yeah. I don't know what we would have done if he said, no, you're going to cover it all. As administrator, he liked the idea of roll it in 1 year at a time. Is there going to be a group of people who oversight us, who are looking at, checking out? No. I trust the teachers, the principal trusts me, president trusts the principal, bishop trusts the president, so we don't have perhaps an issue that other people might have. We know you're doing the best you can. Now, we're still getting some calls from parents. That's not the case, but, yeah. Since he's hold the purse strings, if he says, we'll give you the time, we'll give you time off, we'll give you the money. So what's your timeline as we end now? Okay? Those people who have started it, you're all in, all 4 years at once? All right. First year you did it, 3 years will be started all at once. Or did you do first year? Good.
We never know who our people are going to be because, as I've said, we're unionized, and they took our one of we only had 4 in our department to begin with, and in July or either the end of June they took away another one of our religion teachers. So it's like, well, now who's teaching what, and we can't depend on that.
That's why this approach, when Alan asked me, I cannot come in and say, here is the answer. What I can do is share what one school did. So I don't know what we would have done in your situation. We were a pretty stable group of people. So, anybody else in terms of rolling in all at once? Is that how, if you're going to do it, you're going to roll it up 1 year, then 2 years, then third? Okay.
You should. I mean, we didn't, so you definitely should. We failed dramatically. It was an awful experience.
Good ideas for teacher training? Anybody have any? We sent 2 of ours up to St. Mary's Press in the summertime, and they had a nice idea. Here's how our books are set up. Teachers came back with a different understanding of it.
We just went up, 2 of them are on.
Okay. That's what we found out. Right. Those 4. It's going to take time. And if anybody pushes back, that's the bishop's method, right? The teachers are at the heart of it. It's a Lasallian thing, and it's a Jesus thing. The training is going to be essential, and pick the books that work for you. So, thank you.